Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we've got something very special, a B-1B Lancer nuclear mission out of, let's just say, the spicy side of Nevada. As this video starts, we're already on the runway at Area 51, lined up, 10 a.m., clear blue skies, the heat shimmering off the center line, and there's a 500 kiloton nuclear weapon sitting in the bay for a run out to the Nevada test range. LiL TAB is with us to talk through it. Tab, walk us through what's happening right here at the very start as the jet is about to roll.
Right now, you're seeing the moment right before things get loud. The B1's sitting on the runway, brakes held, and M-Dawg's got all 4 F101 turbofans spooled up behind her. They're at military power, and as she snaps the throttles into afterburner, you've basically just told a flying fuel tank, be a rocket. You'll see that pause, then the jet lurches forward as the brakes release. This big bomber goes from bus on a runway to angry animal in a heartbeat. The wings are swept forward for max lift right now, the bomb bay has a 500 kiloton nuke hanging inside, and the acceleration just keeps building.
And as the speed comes up and she rotates, what's that like from M-Dawg's perspective? She's feeling that weight and momentum, full fuel, nuclear load, desert heat, but she's completely in the groove. You hit rotation speed, ease back, and this huge airplane just lifts into the late morning Nevada sky. Gear coming up, afterburner still pushing, and she's already thinking 3 steps ahead. Departure, low-level ingress, timing to the target, and how she's going to thread this thing through the terrain like it's a fighter.
So we've just watched her roar off the runway at Dreamland with half a megaton on board. Now we should probably talk about who this maniacally qualified human is. Tell us about M-Dawg.
On paper, she's just the aircraft commander of a B-1B. In reality, she is an ace bomber and fighter pilot, a former Edwards AFB test pilot. She's flown B-2s, B-1s, and some top secret stuff we're not allowed to talk about. And on top of that, she has a PhD in cellular biology from UCSF. She's basically what you'd get if Tony Stark and a whiteboard had a baby.
All right, let's do it. We've just watched this takeoff, half a megaton on board, and the B1 is climbing out of Area 51, turning toward the Nevada test range. What's happening now from a systems point of view?
As soon as I cleaned up, gear up, flaps up, afterburner's probably back to military power, the B1 starts settling into its natural environment, going fast and getting low. Up front, you've got 4 crew total, aircraft commander and co-pilot, then the offensive systems officer and defensive systems officer in the back. The brain of the jet is this integrated nav attack system tied into the terrain-following radar. They're loading and confirming the low-level route, target coordinates, weapon profile, all the maths that's going to decide exactly when and where that 500 KT device comes off the jet. You can see the terrain coming up now. Mountains, ridges, those long desert valleys shimmering in the sun. This is where the ground-following tech really kicks in, right? Oh yeah, the B1's terrain-following radar basically turns the autopilot into a stunt pilot. You can dial in how aggressive you want it, how low, how tight it rides the contours, and it'll fly you at 200 to 300 feet above the ground at fighter jet speeds. The radar is constantly looking ahead, building a profile of the terrain, and the autopilot is riding that profile. The crew's still monitoring, still has veto power, but the jet is literally flying this razor-thin energy bound over real mountains, while they worry about timing, threats, and weapons.
And that's part of what made the B1 so nasty as a nuclear delivery platform. It doesn't lumber in up high. It sneaks in down low.
Exactly. Think of it as threading a needle with a freight train. You've got that low altitude, high speed profile, a reduced radar cross-section compared to older bombers, and wings that can sweep back to turn this thing into a very angry arrow. It's not B-2 stealth, but it's a whole lot harder to track and intercept than the old school high flyers.
Okay, in the video, we're coming up on those iconic nuclear craters. You can see that huge scar on the Earth off the nose under the midday sun. Describe that view from the cockpit.
You're skimming the desert in this big bomber, and off one side you've got these massive craters that look like somebody took a bite out of the Earth. The Nevada test range is basically an open-air museum of the nuclear age. Hundreds of test sites scattered across those valleys. Up to the north of where a lot of low-level routes run, you've got one of the largest man-made craters in the country from an underground test. From the air, it almost doesn't look real. It's too clean, too perfectly carved. It's like the terrain lost an argument with physics and just caved in.
As we pass those craters, we're starting the run into the target. Walk us through the B-1 bombing run with a 500 KT nuke.
All right, the jet's locked into its low-level profile, terrain-following radar doing its thing. In the back, the offensive systems officer is living inside the nav attack system, waypoints, time on target, weapon settings. The whole goal is to hit the initial point at exactly the right second, at exactly the right altitude and airspeed.
Okay, so the bomb is away.
For a 500 kiloton shot, timing and geometry matter. Altitude, speed, release angle, all of that feeds into where that weapon ends up. The computer is constantly solving that problem in the background and feeding cues to the crew.
For people watching this, what does a 500 KT detonation on the Nevada test range actually look like from the B-1's perspective?
The first thing is nothing for a moment, because they're hauling away from the target. You've got the jet in the turn, pulling away, climbing or repositioning exactly how the egress plan says. Then, a few heartbeats later, the world behind you lights up.
So from their point of view, it's flash, fireball, shockwave, and then this enormous cloud just sitting over the test range?
Exactly. Flash that turns the desert into a light box, fireball clawing its way up, shockwave rolling outward, and then a massive, ugly reminder floating in the sky over the Nevada test range. It's spectacular and horrifying at the same time, and it's out there on instrumented desert, not over a city, which is the whole point.
And that's when they really lean on the egress?
Right, they're not sticking around for the scenery. As soon as the weapon comes off, they're executing the egress, hard turn, altitude change, using speed and terrain to put as much distance as possible between the jet and ground zero. All the same systems that got them in, nav attack, terrain following, defensive sweep, now flip fully into get us home mode. You can see in the footage they roll off target and start heading toward Las Vegas. The vibe in the cockpit has to change at that point, right?
For sure. You go from ultra-serious low-level strike ninja to we just unleashed a 500 kiloton device on the test range and survived the route. Once the egress is clean and they're back on the wider route structure, there's this micro moment where everyone finally exhales. Then you're back into the regular world, checking in with controllers, coordinating the flyover route near Vegas, and prepping for the arrival into Nellis. Let's talk speed for a second, because chat always wants numbers. Published top speed is one thing,
And the real numbers are another. Officially, you'll hear around Mach 1.2 altitude, which is already wild for something this big. What really matters in this kind of mission is the dash capability, how fast it can go for short bursts when it needs to punch through a threat ring or make a tight time on target window. Ask a B-1 pilot, how fast have you really gone? And you usually get a smirk and a very polite non-answer. down low, with the wings swept and the throttles in the sweet spot, the desert starts to look like a tan blur.
United 1983, winds 240 at 3, RNAV Docker, runway 25, right, for takeoff.
RNAV Docker, for takeoff, for right.
Naked 134 heavy, approximately 25, right, left.
Let's talk about that flyover, because flying a B-1 near Las Vegas is wild. You've got this hyperactive entertainment city underneath and a nuclear-capable bomber overhead that just dropped half a megaton in the desert.
Yeah, it's surreal. You look out and see the strip, casinos, hotels, pools, tourists walking around with neon drinks. And meanwhile, you're sitting in a jet that just employed a 500 kiloton weapon a short flight away. In your headset, you're hearing altitude calls, approach instructions to Nellis. Tactical comms, it's like two completely different realities stacked on top of each other.
Is M-Dawg the type to enjoy the view, or is she all business at that point?
She's both. She'll glance out and say something like, "Yep, there's Vegas. Looks like a motherboard that decided to throw a party." But she doesn't let that distract her. She knows the mission isn't over until they're parked and the engines are shot down. So she soaks it in and keeps the cross-check going.
As we transition to the arrival into Nellis, you can see the mountains off to the side in the video. Walk us through the approach from the desert direction, swinging around the terrain.
Nellis sits right up against those foothills, so you can't just dive straight in. Coming from the desert side, you're working around terrain, flying specific corridors, then bending into final. In a B-1, because it's big and it loves to go fast, you've got to get ahead of it. Slow down early, bring the wings forward to a friendlier sweep angle, manage drag and power so you're not wrestling the jet all the way down final.
And her test pilot background really pays off here, yeah?
Totally. At Edwards AFB, she spent years flying profiles that were all about data, how it stalls, how it handles dirty versus clean, what the margins are. So on approach to Nellis, she's not guessing. She knows exactly how this jet behaves at every configuration. She flies it with that test pilot smoothness, precise, unhurried, very in control.
So we're on final now. You can see the runway at Nellis AFB ahead, gear down, flap set, desert backdrop. What's the mood in the cockpit at this point? It's that mix of professional focus and quiet gravity. They've done the whole thing. Took off from Area 51, dropped low through the test range, flew over massive nuclear history, delivered a 500 kiloton weapon, watched the fireball rise over the desert, buzzed near Vegas, and now they're about to land this beast at Nellis. M-Dawg's probably thinking, stick the landing, don't embarrass yourself on camera, but also, we just executed something huge out there.
Okay, wheels are on the ground now, spoilers up, you can see the B-1 rolling out and turning off the runway. This is that moment when the world gets quiet again.
Yeah, throttles back, engines winding down, checklist coming out. Everyone's brain transitions from fight to file paperwork. They taxi in, park on the ramp, and then you get the classic M-Dawg line, all right, what did we break and what did we learn?
Such a test pilot thing to say.
Totally. And for her, what did we learn isn't just about the jet, it's also what did we learn about humans carrying this kind of responsibility? How did the crew handle stress? What does it really mean to wield a 500 kiloton weapon in the real world and not just talk about it on slides?
Before we wrap, hit us with your favorite M-Dawg story that ties all of this together.
One of my favorites, we were at a joint exercise debrief and someone asked a question about radiation dosimetry, how you track exposure over a career. Most people in the room are like, we wear the badge. And M-Dawg casually explains how ionizing radiation damages cell membranes, how the body tries to repair that, and how those patterns show up in the data years later. Then, 15 minutes later, she's walking everyone through low-level ingress tactics in a B-1 in bad weather at night, carrying a 500 KT load. Same person, same briefing, science and tactics just braided together.
That's terrifying and awesome at the same time.
That's M-Dawg. If the world ever gets close to doing something really stupid, she's the one in the room going, here's what this actually means for real human beings at the molecular level. And then she goes and flies the mission that reminds everyone why this stuff is supposed to stay in the realm of test ranges and hard-earned lessons, not cities.
Delta 8958 to Mustang Whiskey, cross 224 left, contact ground 0.65, traffic holding position.
I love how you talk about her like she's half pilot, half scientist. That's because she is. In the debrief after a mission like this, you'll get the usual tactical questions. How was timing? Did we hold altitudes? And then she'll add, by the way, here's what a 500 kiloton burst actually does at the cellular level to unprotected tissue. And here's what the long-term effects look like. And everyone else is thinking, okay, so M-Dawg just turned debrief into a graduate seminar again.
3 LA Tower, crash full cross, waiting for traffic off the south complex, runway 24 left line. This one 3837 heavy at Yankee, cross, runway 24 left, and contact ground 0.65. Southwest 3660 at Victor, cross, runway 24 left, and 3 LA Tower, runway 24 left, on a blade traffic cross, waiting for traffic off the south.
People are definitely going to ask, with her background, B2, B1, test pilot, PhD, why is she still flying frontline missions instead of just sitting in a think tank? Because that's not her. M-Dawg thinks the science only really matters if it's grounded in reality. When she talks about radiation and cellular damage, she does it as someone who's actually flown the platforms that deliver those yields. When she talks about human performance, she means it from experience. Flying jets at the edge of their envelope at 3 a.m. over mountains with a half-megaton weapon in the bay. So she's literally bridging the gap between lab science and operational reality. Exactly. That's why I respect her so much. She can walk into a briefing and talk differential equations, cell biology, and weapons tactics in a single breath. And it all lines up. Then she'll go strap into a bomber, drop low over the Nevada desert, and fly a route that would terrify most people, even in a sim.
25, right?
Let's go short 25 left.
All right, the jet's parked, engines spooling down, crew heading off to debrief. Any final thought you want people to have as they watch these last shots of the B-1 sitting out there in the Nevada sun?
Yeah. Just remember that behind every big, scary piece of metal, there are real people like M-Dawg. People who study the hard science, train like maniacs, and carry this responsibility on their shoulders so that the decision to ever use a 500 kiloton weapon gets treated with the absolute seriousness it deserves.
Beautifully said. All right, folks, huge thanks to LIL TAB for walking us through this B-1 Lancer mission and giving us a window into the mind of M-Dawg, the ace pilot scientist from a base that officially doesn't exist. If you enjoyed this, hit like, drop your questions for LIL TAB in the comments, and tell us what aircraft or mission you want to see next. More B-1 low levels, B-2 night ops, or maybe a little F-22 versus the world.
I vote all of the above, obviously.
Of course you do. Thanks for hanging out with us, everyone. We'll see you on the next mission.
Tab out.